Hey, Michael, I've always been fascinated with actors' jobs behind the camera. Cast a Giant Shadow, what glamorous duties do they have you do on that film?
I was the third assistant director to the assistant director, I remember on that picture in Israel. Also, I got to drive a Jeep a couple of times.
So I know you had been on movie sets before that, but did that leave a real impression on you?
Um, I mean, all of them did. I think it really helped me for my career. You know, I worked with my father on The Heroes of Telemark in Norway. I was an assistant film editor on Lonely Are the Brave, working in Los Angeles. And movie sets are a little bit like the circus. You know, you've got a big extended family around there to kind of look out for you, and it was a nice experience.
You know, I know you'd been back to San Francisco shooting films since the streets of San Francisco, but doing this film, driving around all these different streets, were you flashing back to old streets of San Francisco shoots?
I did. We used to talk a lot about it as we were doing a lot of the car chasing stuff and the differences now in terms of how they tow the cars for the sequences. And in the streets of San Francisco, we used to have two cameras to shoot Carl Malden and myself at the same time out the side of the car, no towing. I used to have to drive the car to remember my lines and make sure that I had enough space on either side so we wouldn't hit the cameras. Although with the game, I ended up in the San Francisco Bay, which I never did in streets.
You know, I felt sorry for you on this film because you were in basically every shot. I mean, when you were going through the shooting schedule at the beginning, were you a little
Apprehensive? I knew what I was getting into. The tough part was that I knew it was, you know, the role called for a pretty big emotional roller coaster ride, and you kind of have to sort of like, you know, monitor your performance. You've got to really figure it out beforehand because you don't shoot in continuity. So you had to kind of know the emotional level that you had to be here because the next scene you might shoot in 3 months, and it was tough.
On the humorous side, this whole thing about game playing, do you ever sense people kind of playing games with you when they want to meet you, like people like bumping into you? Oh, Michael Douglas, hi.
Right, right. Well, you do get that. You also get the reverse thing. I remember from being a kid, and even now, where people say, "Oh, he's a movie star. He must think he's hot stuff. Therefore, I'll act real cool and blasé." And you haven't done anything. You can't quite figure out what's going on. I think also our director, David Fincher, is a very, very talented man. Did a movie called Seven before the game, and I always thought he too always had the ability to play some games.
And one last question: doing a story on the things that actors ask for in films. And a question for you as a producer, and no names are necessary, but have you ever worked on a film where you saw an actor make really outlandish demands for things like, say, like a Learjet or something? And how do you handle those kind of situations?
Well, they have the so-called perk packages have gotten more and more extraordinarily huge along with the salaries. And there's some people that have an entourage around them that is staggering. And normally what you just try to do is you don't try to add. It's very hard to take away from what they've already gotten, but you sure don't add any more to what they already have.
Okay, great. Perfect.
Thanks.
Very much, sir.
My
Yeah,
pleasure.
yeah.